Welcome to the Harper Tech Academy, and today we are looking at the amazing cookery method of stewing. It's so versatile. It gives you food that is so beautiful, meat that's tender and moist, and it actually combines all of the juices that we actually cook in, so it intensifies the flavor. Can't wait to show you all about it. In this mix for cookery method stewing, we're actually going to look at the definition of stewing, suitable foods and recipes, the characteristics of beautiful stewed food, those procedures that you'll need to actually make them, utensils and equipment that you would need to use, those associated culinary terms which we're learning, as always WHS and hygiene, and then finally looking at common problems, how we fix them, and the nutritional content of stewing. So let's have a look at the definition of stewing and look at that beautiful dish there. So stewing is a slow and gentle moist heat method of cookery where the food is covered with liquid. It's a long and slow process, so you actually get intense flavor and color. The stew is a combination of solid food ingredients that have been cooked in water or other water-based liquid like stocks, typically by simmering, and then served without draining, so you get all that yumminess. We're looking at two different types of stew. We have a white based stew where we're making like a white based velouté, and a brown stew which can also be thickened but usually is just a reduction of beautiful meaty flavors. Stewing is so versatile, so let's have a look at suitable foods. Meat cuts. Generally you want meat cuts that are not the prime cuts. They have lots of marbled fat and connective tissue because it's a long and slow process, and you'll actually get better stewed food. Fruit and vegetables stew so beautifully, particularly fruit. Stewed seafood is yummy. It develops all of those lovely flavors. And also poultry and game. Game being game birds. It could be venison, pheasant, that kind of thing. Right, let's get the menu out once again, the stewing menu. Are you ready? All right, with chicken we can make beautiful Thai chicken jungle curries. This is a bouillabaisse, which is a French fish stew, absolutely amazing. Fruit, making beautiful fruit compotes. We can actually use them for crumbles, and lamb korma curry. So that whole Indian cookery is based on stewing, and that's why it's so tasty. So let's look at the characteristics of beautiful stewed food. If you actually look here, we have stewed prunes and oranges. So I wanted to show you how you could use the fruit. So technique, generally we're using rougher cuts of meat which have more fat. And what that gives us is that beautiful marbling or gelatinous connective tissue which turns into gelatin. And I've just put an example here. You'll see the steak has a lot of fat. That's what we call marbling. Now let's talk flavor. As previously mentioned, it gives the long process gives intense flavor and colors, which is really awesome. The food is also very moist as you're actually serving up the juices with the meat, which makes such a difference. It wouldn't be a cookery methods mix without the stewing procedures. So first of all, I'm using the example of cutting a meat. So we're going to cut the meat into 3-centimeter dice. Then we're actually going to shallow fry and seal the meat off, get that caramelization happening. Take the meat out, but leave the pan on. Then what we're going to do is called deglaze. Now deglaze is normally done with a wine or stock, and what that actually does is that brings up all of the beautiful yumminess off the bottom of the pan. Be aware, if it's burnt, do not do this. You'll actually wash it. Then you're actually going to cover it with a liquid, which would be stock and wine, and cooked very slow on a simmer until it's cooked. And again, if you've got rougher cuts of meat, it might take an hour, 2 hours to actually cook them down and make them tender and beautiful. Stewing equipment, let's have a look. Lovely dish there. We're going to use tongs. This is a casserole dish. Spoons. It can also be done in the oven or on the stove as long as it's just simmering. As with all of the cookery methods, there are actually associated culinary terms that we need to think about. First of all is to deglaze, which is a process of lifting the caramelized pan juices by adding stock to dissolve sediments, adds so much extra flavor. We're looking at a compote, which refers to a fruit stew. Simmer is to actually just have the liquid just rolling over. Normally sits between 90 to 92 degrees. And roux. Roux is that thickening agent, consists of 50% butter, 50% flour, used to thicken stews. As with other cookery methods, there is some hazards. Due to the slow nature of the pot, it can get very, very hot. So careful of any splashes of hot liquid. And also there's a lot of steam that will escape when you lift the lid, so be careful with it. All right, we've come to the help section of our mix, common problems and our solution. So a stew is light brown when it should be white. The cause generally is the stock is too dark, we've cooked the meat or the vegetables, or we may have cooked the roux out and it's started to color. The solution there really is to cook for less time. Next one is the meat is too tough, and this is so happens a lot with stewing. Cause generally is you haven't cooked it long enough to actually break down those connective tissues, and you know what the solution is: to cook for longer. The next problem, we're actually looking at the stew is burnt, has a smoky flavor. Well, what have you done? You've burnt it. It's cooked too long, you haven't stirred it enough, and it's a fairly simple solution. Next time, cook for less time, make sure it's stirred. Then we're actually looking at the final problem. With meat-based stews, the sauce could be too greasy, and generally this might be you haven't trimmed enough fat off your meat, or you haven't adequately actually skimmed the fat off the top as it's rendering down in cookery. Solution there, again, skim the stew more often will actually help. If you want healthy food, stewing is the way to go. There is no nutrient loss at all because the whole juice and everything you cook in comes with the dish. And the final one is waste minimization. So it's a cheap method of cookery. You can use rough cuts of meat and get amazing results. All ingredients remain, so it gives the big tick of approval. This is probably the one cookery method that has no waste minimization at all and is very effective for people from small restaurants through to large restaurants. It's yummy, and I hope you've enjoyed this. So the next step is to actually get out there, try stewing. It is an amazingly versatile way of cooking. I love curries, so this is an amazing way of actually cooking beautiful meat, chicken curries. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time at the Harper Tech Academy.